Ladies and gentlemen, as was predicted, it has happened again. Another speeding supercar has crashed and run over people, and once again, more than the crash, it is the callousness that is shocking. Well, this time it has happened in Noida, where a car dealer, Deepak, based out of Ajmer, driving a 5 crore rupee Lamborghini, struck two pedestrians on a footpath. Both are in hospital, one is critical. But it wasn't the crash, but what happened after that that has now gone viral. When this driver was confronted by bystanders, he brazenly asked, "Kya koi mar gaya idhar?" Listen in to what exactly he said.
इसका गाड़ी सीख ली है। कितना आदमी मरा पता है? मर गया इधर। तो क्या? देख उधर। पुलिस को बुलाओ पहले। पुलिस को बुलाओ भैया। कितना आदमी मरा पता है? मर गया इधर। तो क्या? देख उधर। कितना आदमी मरा पता है? मर गया इधर। तो क्या? देख उधर।
Ladies and gentlemen, the Lamborghini Huracan that you will see on your screens, and there it is priced anywhere between 3 crores to 5 crore rupees, given what version you are buying. But the driver, Deepak, showed zero remorse for the crime. He's out on bail. Just by the way, the supercar is not owned by him. It is owned by a YouTuber called Mridul Tiwari, who has nearly 19 million subscribers. Now, reports are suggesting that this YouTuber reportedly wanted to sell off his car and had spoken to Deepak about it, who then took it out for a test drive. He lost control, leading to this accident. Now, since Mridul was not driving the car, no charges are likely to be pressed against him, which is fair. But last evening, when cops arrested the Lamborghini driver, they didn't name him either in the FIR, and that raised a lot of questions. If the police had already taken the driver into custody, why was he not named? Questions were also raised on whether the FIR should mention the YouTuber and if his name had been deliberately skipped. In fact, the kin of the victim who filed the FIR are alleging that police officials called him hours after the accident to sign the FIR. And it was public outcry, he says, and constant pressure from their end that compelled the police to later add the driver's name in the new FIR. Ladies and gentlemen, it's not the first time that a luxury car has been involved in a crash. Last year, if you remember, in May, a teen driving a Porsche had rammed into a bike in Pune and killed two software engineers. In December, a Mumbai woman lost her life when a speeding BMW hit the scooter she and her husband were riding. Question is, has speeding become urban India's new epidemic? And is this why the Indian government is planning to suspend the driving license of people who haven't paid challans within 3 months of it being issued? Well, according to the draft, if you or anyone else has accumulated 3 challans for jumping traffic signals or dangerous driving, your driving license could be confiscated for at least 3 months. The government is also thinking of linking higher insurance premiums for someone who has 2 or more unpaid challans from the previous financial year. But the question is, can stricter traffic laws like suspending licenses for unpaid challans finally put the brakes on reckless speeding? My guests this evening, let me quickly introduce them to you. Hormazd Sorabjee is editor, Autocar India, joining us on the broadcast. PK Jain is a retired IPS officer. Shailesh Sinha is CEO of the Traffic People Foundation. Thank you very much. And Anulal is a lawyer. She's an author. She's joining us on the broadcast as well. Mr. Sorabjee, I'm going to come to you first. I usually come to you first for perspective. I'm fairly certain that you are not surprised that another supercar has crashed into some pedestrians sleeping, managed to injure them and put them, well, in hospital. In this case, the young driver asks, "Koi mar gaya hai ya kahan?" What is it that has shocked you? Is it the state of the car, and this is a 5 crore rupee car, or is it the callousness that we saw on our screens?
Well, I think, I did see that clip, and clearly, I think definitely there was callousness. I even felt he was in a bit of a daze as to what had happened. But I think what I'm not surprised about is an accident like this purely because, I think, again, and I've said this before, you can't just blame the car. These are very powerful cars, and they need to be driven by people who have some basic semblance of driving skill, because they accelerate to 100 kilometers in around 3.5 to 4 seconds. And it's very difficult for people who are not experienced with this kind of power to have a sense of judgment, and things happen very, very quickly, and your body is not tuned to react fast enough, and that's why these accidents happen. So it's all about being used to this sort of power and performance, or not being used to this sort of power and performance, which leads to these sort of accidents. So clearly, on one hand, you've got cars which are getting better, more powerful, they have better brakes also, but in the wrong hands, they can be lethal. These cars in the right hands, they are designed to perform the way they are. So again, it leads me to the fact that, the driving skill, or just the fundamental driving test, is, as I've said, the root cause of, I would say, the majority of accidents in India. We just are a nation of terrible drivers.
We are a nation of terrible drivers. We are also a nation that very often, more often than not, sees drunken driving, speeding, and hit and runs. In this case, Mr. Sorabjee, I need to tell our viewers that this was not a case of drunken driving. The police has ruled that out, and I think that is also fairly visible, from the video of the young man who's in a bit of a daze, but certainly doesn't look like he's drunk. Secondly, this was also not a case of hit and run. Because the family is telling us that that this car dealer from Ajmer actually stopped his car, asked koi mar gaya hai kya, and then was the one who took the two injured to hospital. So I needed to clarify that. You're saying it's not a problem with the machine, it's a problem with the man. How is it a problem? And why do you say that we are a nation of terrible drivers? Is it because most of us don't even need to show up at a driving center to get a license? I mean, you can do that sitting at home. All you need to do is pay a bribe, and the license will be in your house the next day.
Absolutely. Our driving test is so lax. It's a complete joke. I think, the fundamentals of driving are basically, it's all about judgment. It's all about hand-to-eye coordination. It's all about your judgment of speed when some object is coming close to you at a certain speed. It's all about reaction time. Fundamentally, it's all about reaction time. The time it takes from you to realize there's a problem and then to, react to it. I think reaction times vary. Racing drivers do it in about 0.1, 0.2 seconds. Other people take, as much as a second. If you're going really fast, let's say doing 100 kilometers an hour, you've traveled several meters before you can react. And it's in that time when the accident really happens, and people don't realize that, they've been unable to stop in time or control the car in time. So basically, to put it very simply, speed really is the issue over here. And really, I think that's the biggest safety net when anyone driving, is to just make sure that you have a safety net around you, that anything untoward happens, there's enough time for you to react, and that time can only be had if you're going slowly. Otherwise, you're going much faster, you're outside your safety envelope.
Mr. P.K. Jain, as a retired IPS officer, probably looking at these visuals, there are two things that strike me. If you look at the person who originally owns the 5 crore car, it's a young YouTuber in his late 20s. If you look at the person who's wanting to or planning to buy that car, again, someone in his late 20s. It's clearly not a problem with the car. These are cars that are meant to perform, and they are performing. Is it more than the person behind the wheel, the age of the person behind the wheel, that really is the culprit in most of these cases? Because, data is telling us that what is the demographic that is buying these super fast, super luxury, super expensive cars? It's actually the young. It's not the old.
Shreya, thank you very much for having me here. It's a fact that the youngsters want to have a lifestyle and they want to flaunt it. They want to spend their money, or they want to spend their parents' money. That's a fact of life. So they want to go in for the best. In this case, both the youngsters who want to sell and who want to acquire are both youngsters. And the only thing, as I think my predecessor said, is that the people have to be capable of handling this kind of speed. a car, there was a study long back which was conducted, I think my co-panelist will bail me out, that a car traveling at 60 miles per hour takes about 30 meters drag time to stop. Now, with a car like this, which speeds very fast and which may, as he says that the brakes are also very good, still it may take about 30 to 40 meters before the car can be brought to a halt if it is speeding. Now, in this case, apparently the guy could not control the car, and rightly enough, he has been booked. The only thing which I find, which is a little disturbing, is that he should have been named in the FIR, and the entire circumstance of how this car came in his possession and who is the owner, everything should have been listed in the FIR, because there's a procedure to it. Whatever happens, and during inquiry, everybody speaks like a like a parrot. So the facts would be before the police, before this FIR was registered, and in any case, the relatives say that it took them a few hours before the FIR was registered. So the facts were before the police. The person who owned the car and the person who was driving the car should have been named in the FIR, because FIR is the only document which the court places reliance on. All subsequent statements made by witnesses are not being relied by the court upon. So I think somewhere somebody has goofed, and this goofing is also generally deliberate. I have seen with with a lot of
yeah, I was about to ask you. You're saying it was a goof up. Was it a goof up, or was there some money probably taken under the table?
See, unless Shreya, somebody has specifically pointed or complained about, I would not say that some money has exchanged hands. That could be a possibility, but there's a goof up deliberate, and now deliberate goof up can only be because of some consideration. Either a political pressure. I always keep maintaining two things. In this country, the things don't happen if there's a political pressure or if there's money involved. So any of those two things could have happened. So I wouldn't lay my bet only on money part of it. But the goof up is certainly there. The officer should have been extremely careful with such cases mounting in the country. I mean, it is in the fitness of things. As a father of some children, the concerned investigating officer should have been alive to this problem, and he should have taken proper precaution while registering the FIR. Yeah.
Shailesh Gandhi, I'm just coming back, Mr. Jain, that's a good perspective. Shailesh Gandhi, I'm just coming back to the car itself. This is a supercar. If you look at last year, if you look at 2024, Shailesh, I beg your pardon, Shailesh, in 2024, luxury car sales in India saw significant growth. And do you know who was fueling them? It was millennials who were buying nearly 10 Mercedes Maybachs every week. Not the older generation, but the younger generation, millennials. 10 Maybachs every week. They are the ones fueling the growth of the super luxury car segment in India. My question to you is, if they are unfit to drive, should we even be selling these cars to them? I mean, idhar it's all very well for this young man to say, "Koi mara kya? Abhi tak koi nahi mara." Lekin mar bhi sakta tha. Then what?
See, I'll tell you how the things work. We are still giving licenses as LMB drivers, right? And these luxury cars and these sports cars, they are not LMBs. They are not light motor vehicle. They are practically sports, super powerful vehicle. Understand one basic thing. An Airbus pilot and a fighter jet pilot, right? The difference of brains are very, very different to each other. Though both are driving planes, right? Or both are, piloting planes. But at the end of the day, the brain, the cognitive skills, the motoring skills are way too different of a fighter pilot than an Airbus pilot. So same is the case when it comes to a normal car or a sports car. A sports car cannot be driven on those roads because, as Sorabjee said, that 50 meters are practically needed to stop a car which is moving at a universal motion law, which says that 100 kilometers per hour speed would take about 50 meters for a car to stop, right? And I've been to that stretch where the accident has happened. It's sector 94, and the stretches are not more than 200 or 300 meters in length, right? And the car has to accelerate also and it has to stop also. And the worst part is that there's construction happening. There are 2-3 developers which are developing buildings. So in the evening part, there will always be, and there are always laborers, who are moving out of their workplaces and moving on that dark road. All the roads in Sector 94 are dark in nature. This also needs to be considered. Only the driver has not to be taken into fault. Yes, he's at fault because he was driving fast, but end of the day, our licensing system should, penalize these people. If a sports car is being driven, it should not be driven at a point of an LMV license. There has to be a sports car license. There has to be a proper training. Somebody who's driving a sports car in India, as millennials you said, they need to be trained properly. In a 1 month certificate should be there, 2 month certificate should be there, because it is not just a motoring thing. It is a proper motoring skill which is needed. You need, because these sports cars are very low in profile. You are so way too down on the floor and not able to see. There is so much of anticipation which is needed. There is so much of reaction time which is needed. So we need to take all these things into consideration. If Lamborghinis, Ferraris are being sold in India, they should not be sold to just any millennial. There has to be a proper training system, and there has to be a proper, condition in which a proper license which is separate from LMVs should be issued to these kind of drivers, because end of the day, it is life which is gone, which goes in an accident. Luckily, in this case, there were no life loss, but end of the day, there would have been chances for the same. A person who has come to work, he has some dreams, and certainly, a person comes and, drives the car over the person, and the person dies forever. The point is, we need to be really vocal that LMV license should not be applied on these sports cars. And millennial, yeah.
No, that's a very good point you make, and the point that you make, I think, is one that stays with me, where you're saying that a Boeing 747 pilot needs to have different skills than a pilot who's flying a Rafale, right? There is a difference between a fighter pilot and his skills, and there is a difference between a Boeing a pilot who's carrying regular civilian passengers. I completely get that. But Mr. Sorabjee, is it practical? I'm just asking you the practicality of it. Okay. But Mr. Sorabjee, is it practical for the RTO and the government of India to step up and say...
Please go ahead with the answer.
Okay. Okay, I'll come to you as well. Mr. Sorabjee, but is it practical for the government of India and for the RTO to say, Acha bhai, if you're buying a Porsche, or if you're buying a Maybach, or if you're buying a Lamborghini, your regular license will not do. You need a special license if you want to drive this very special car. Is that even practical?
Yeah. Well, yeah. See, look, I think, honestly, it's sometimes more to do with attitude than just the license or the skill. Now, where I will disagree is that today a Porsche, a very powerful Porsche, or these electric cars which are super powerful, driven at 60 kilometers an hour, you need as much skill as driving a Swift at 60 kilometers an hour. In fact, a Porsche at 60 kilometers an hour will be much safer in the hands of an inexperienced driver than a Swift in the hands of an inexperienced driver at 60 kilometers an hour, because the brakes are much better. And talking about braking distances, these cars from 100 to 0 can stop in under 30 meters. Their brakes are so powerful. But anyway, coming to the point is, I think you can't just, put a simple formula on this and say that, a powerful car needs to have a special license. It's just the way the people drive. And honestly, I think, things being hefty penalties, the absolute fear of law, the fear of non-bailable, let's say warrants and stuff like that, that's the real way you can really punish these people, because honestly, they don't deserve to be get off scot-free with this sort of driving. But again, you can have a guy and he might pass his test really well. He might be very skillful, but he might be doing something stupid like, driving in the night when there's poor visibility, and he can still have the accident. So there's no real guarantee that even if you have a special driving test of the person's skill, that, these accidents won't happen. Yes, the fact is that you need a basic level of skill. And above that, what I will say is that why this is happening more with millennials is a lack of experience. You see, the number one way to stay out of trouble on Indian roads, or try and avoid accidents as much as possible, is experience. There is just absolutely no substitute for experience. And what I mean in experience is, with experience, you kind of develop a sixth sense. You can read the road a lot better. You know when you should be going fast, when you should not be going fast. You know when something might pop out, let's say out of a blind road coming, or someone might just take a U-turn in front front of you, these library of events which you've gone through in, let's say, years and years of driving, you kind of build on this and build your experience. So, you know, there are two things. One is the absolute driving skill of a person with quick reflexes, and the other is of, let's say, an older driver who has a lot of experience and can judge when there is a danger spot, approaching him and take evasive action or even preemptive action accordingly.
And Shailesh Sinha, you know, as my producer is pointing out, say in a country like England, there are two kinds of licenses, one for a higher CC and one for a lower CC. There is no reason why in India that can't happen.
That is what I'm saying.
Out.
I mean, that is the same thing what I'm saying. I mean, if it is happening internationally, why can't this happen in India? Because we are a progressive country, we are evolving country. So what all things are there? We have the best metros, we have the best malls of the world. You know, we keep traveling. So we see we have the best automobile. Then why can't we be having the best support system, supporting document to have those vehicles, in space? The rightly said by a producer. I mean, there are different types of license across the globe. You know, for a Luna, they'll be different. For a two-wheeler would be different. For a, Harley, it would be different because the machinery changes, the handling changes, the motoring skill changes, everything changes. And how can you drive with one license all kinds of machinery? You getting my point? The Airbus and fighter pilot angle, what I'm saying, that has to be the case in India. And it is all about the work to be done by the government. Lamborghinis, Porsches, Ferraris, or all these Lotuses, they should not be just sold like that. There has to be proper cognitive skill or maybe training. I mean, there has to be a training process which before bringing the car onto the road by the millennials, they should be trained properly that how to handle these machines. Plus, they should be having those license what I'm promoting or what I'm proposing.
Okay. Anulal, as a citizen of this country, you're also a lawyer, you're also an author, you're watching all of this, you're listening to all of us talk, and then came a point where, it was mentioned by one of our panelists that you need to have higher challans, there needs to be stricter compliance. It's only then that rules will be followed and speed limits will be followed. वो तो कभी होने वाला नहीं है. Even now, today, Delhi government is proposing a host of things that if you have challans, 3 महीने license suspend कर देंगे, etc., etc. से होने वाला कुछ नहीं है. India continues to be the country where the maximum number of people die in accidents.
See, India is a country where in India, we have 1% of the world's vehicles and we have roughly 10% of global accident deaths. And these are not just caused by these Lamborghinis or these higher Porsches or the BMWs of the world. It's caused by a whole different array. All sorts of vehicles can cause death here. Now, the issue here is that किसी को डर ही नहीं है यहाँ पे. Indian lives in India are cheap and Indian elite have a license to kill. So when it comes to Indian elite, they are very well aware that the laws are very weak. One, and second, they are never implemented. So the constant playbook in cases of whether it's a BMW, a Porsche case, a Lamborghini case, Elista Pereira, or it's Sanjeev Nanda, the constant playbook is an early bail, destruction of evidence, police collusion, delayed charge sheet, and eventually the witnesses will turn hostile and the case will drag on for years. So किसी को डर नहीं है implementation का. That is the first thing. If there is fear, automatically laws are adhered to. I agree with the point that yes, when you have a Luna, you need a different license, and to drive a Porsche, you may need a different license. Turning the argument on the other side also, there is case for differential punishment also. Now, countries like Denmark have laws which have different punishment as proportion to the income that you earn, because it is believed that the higher you are in society, the more you should adhere to the law. So that is also the case that exists in this very world. That is also a thought which exists. Now we have to see what kind of thought that we have to take. The second case that you mentioned here, where the little girl is actually killed. Now, that was not a powerful vehicle. That was a normal, ordinary vehicle. And the girl died in that case, or is severely injured, as your report showed. So here the issue is that हमें किसी का डर नहीं रह गया. We have a law called 304A for accidents, which now in Bharatiya Nyaya Samhita changed to 1062. But that has been put on hold because last year the truckers objected that, we do not want these stringent laws, because there the punishment was really stringent. and the Bharatiya Nyaya Samhita 1062 has been put on hold. Matlab, this is the level of lawmaking and implementation that's the message that we are giving out. So what hope do we have to instill fear in people? Nothing.
Mr. Jain, what is the hope when within 2 hours of this crash, and this crash being caught on camera, the person behind the wheels who has sent 2 people into ICU in a hospital is given bail within 2 hours?
Shreya, this generally happens. If it's a bailable case, the police are bound to release the person on bail the moment a bail is presented or the advocate appears in the police station. So, and if they do not bail the person out, the courts come down very heavily on the police officers. So they are on the defensive all the time. In non-bailable cases, yes, they are supposed to arrest and produce them in the court, but bailable cases, the courts, including the Supreme Court, everybody is extremely categorical and clear that the bail should be offered in the police station. We call it a table bail. So the person comes, kills a person, or maybe, you know, even in 304A cases, as my predecessor was speaking just now, Ms. Lal, 304, of course, is culpable homicide. 304A was death by accident. Even that was a bailable offense. So a person comes to the police station and gets bail immediately. All these bus drivers, all these local bus utility drivers, you know, they have a pact with the union has a pact with the management. The moment a death is caused, accidental death is caused by the driver, the union and the management of the best or DTU, they come, DTC, they come to the police and get a bail. So that's the way the things are.
Okay. You know, this is what I'm taking away from this discussion. This has been an informative one. Thank you very much. That if a commercial pilot and a fighter pilot need different kinds of training and need different kinds of licenses, then someone who is driving a Maruti Suzuki and someone who is driving a Lamborghini also need different licenses. They need to be trained differently. They need to handle their cars differently. And that is something probably that the government of India now should seriously start considering, given the spate of accidents we have seen that have involved supercars. We leave it there for the moment. Thank you very much, Mr. Sorabjee, for joining us. Shailesh Sinha, good to have you. Anulal, thank you. And Mr. Jain, always good to have you on the show. Thank you very much. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, I'm slipping into a quick break. There has been some deliberate provocation from the side of Bangladesh in China against India. That's coming up next. Do stay with us.